I think we have a misunderstanding of what leadership is. I think all of us are called to leadership. All of us. Once you get to the point of mastering your craft, you become a leader. Or uh, you've been an apprentice and you're still new, but now it's time to step into leadership because you've been trained in a particular area of life. We all start as apprentices. None of us come out the womb leading. None of us. We are all under tutors until we have the responsibility of leading. Now, some of us take up leadership very seriously and are very successful at leading. I think what most leaders feel is that the end game is the task at hand. How well can we create a widget and get it into the marketplace, get it up on shelves, get it marketed, get it sold, and then make more widgets? Or how big can we make our organization so that we can have impact in our community? Visual presence. Visual presence. I think a lot of leaderships like visual presence. I don't think visual presence is as important as leadership as demonstrated right here in Deuteronomy 5. In truth, I think it can be said that Moses stayed pretty much out of the visual presence of the majority of the people. And that Moses spent more time with the apprenticeship of key leadership. In other words, he was transitioning himself out of a position and transitioning others into a position. The task was the task. It was commanded by God. Task was the task, which was to get the people. And by the way, this is for my kids, my grandkids, my brothers and sisters in Kenya, my brothers and sisters in Ghana, my brothers in Bangladesh, and whomever else this helps. Just to make that clear. No, the task is the task. The task is based on the desire of God as he expressed to Moses before Moses even went back to Egypt, because he heard the cries of his people to deliver them out of bondage, because they had no leader, outside leader, that had the education or the approval of God to do the work. He called Moses, who was familiar with the culture, into Egypt to lead the people out of bondage. all while fighting them along the way, by the way. Which is the reason why it took, I believe, the reason why it took a lot of things. But one thing I would like to highlight, someone coming from without the culture, from outside of the culture, but still familiar with the culture, born into the culture, and even in that he had to produce miracles. He had to convince the leadership of Israel. He had to convince the leadership of Egypt. That's leadership. That's pretty good. And it was just him, his older sister, and his older brother. Coming in to do this thing. Now, listen, again, for my kids, for my grandkids, for those who consider me a teacher, you have many teachers, not many fathers. But a lot of people want to lead. But leadership has a lot of responsibility. The reason the reason why I'm putting such an emphasis on this is because the Torah, or the Pentateuch, or depending on your culture, the Torah or the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, has everything you need without even reading the rest of the Bible. Has everything you need to take you from A to Z. Everything. In truth, I believe that Genesis 1 and 2 is a reflection of the first revolution of life. And Adam dealing with the pride and the lust that he was dealing with. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. That's not old. That's not New Testament. That's Old Testament. that's the whole purpose of having to create a pathway. Moses was the leader of that pathway for the children of Israel out of bondage into a land of success, which the Father had promised not them, but the Father had promised Isaac, Abram, and Jacob. I didn't say it in order, but bear with me. It's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not Abram, but Abraham, father. Okay, gotcha. Bear with me here. We can debate the extra stuff later. No, these people, millions of people, were living out the success of a promise made to their ancestors and elders. We, as children of God, do not appreciate the work that has already gone before us. Oftentimes. It is expressed through how we treat each other and how we treat our leaders. But the responsibility. Now, if you're truly called to leadership, I think Deuteronomy 5 verse 31 can only be seen or interpreted one way. I'm going to share that with you by simply reading it without the introduction in 30 and without the carrying forward in 32. Just 31. And I'm hoping that you hear it the way I hear it. If you're called to leadership. If you're not called to leadership, and again, everyone is not called to this high level of a leader. This is the highest of levels of leadership. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 31. But as for me. Sorry, I read that wrong. But as for thee, Thee, but as for thee, stand thou here by me, and I will speak unto thee all the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which thou shalt teach them, that they may do in the land which I give them to possess it. This may sound basic to some people, but this is not basic leadership at all. Because every one of those, every part of that verse has tentacles, has things that are attached to it. I'll give you an example. But as for thee, means there are others that this does not apply to. I'm not talking to the princes of the tribes. I'm not talking to the Levitical tribe. Leaders. I'm not talking to the congregation. The princes, the Levitical tribe, or the congregation are not in on this conversation. As much as they think they are, they're not. But as for thee, in particular, I want to have a conversation with you about next steps. But as for thee, stand by me in the midst of all the challenges, in the midst of all the jockeying for positions, in the midst of all the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, in the midst of the conferences, in the midst of the bad treatment of other leaders, leader to leader crime. In the midst of the gossiping. No. Stand by me. Forget all that. Stand by me. Stand by me. The hand of Moses. The kingdom of God. His ways of being. His ways of doing. Stand by me. The consistency of your heart position towards the God that created the whole system and the people he's called you to, stand by me. When you're being talked about or not talked about, wrongly recognized or not recognized at all, stand by me. There's a purpose. And I will speak unto thee. You stand by me, I'll speak to you. You stand, I'll speak. I'll speak unto you. So while all these challenges are happening with your congregation and the princes and the Levitical tribe, keep in mind, the Levitical tribe questioned his leadership as well. The princes questioned his leadership. The greatest prophet, the greatest apostle, the greatest pastor, the greatest evangelist, the greatest teacher. Because he did it all through demonstration. He did it all through demonstration. He orchestrated, Moses that is, orchestrated, walked in every office that is recognized in the New Testament church and planted people in those positions. Never about the task at hand, always about the souls. I understand some of you don't understand that yet. But the man was so very rich, yet became so very poor, so that you may be rich. And some of you are so very rich and don't want to become poor. You're the rich young ruler and don't even know it. I've done all these things. I've done all these things. I've done all these things since my youth. The responsibility of a leadership is raising up leaders. That means giving away your position. But stand by me, and I will speak to thee. And I'm going to speak to you about specific things to share with them. And that is the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments. Now, I'm not saying you can't go to your parties, and you can't go to your plays, and you can't do your pictures with your poses, bowing down, pointing the finger in the video. Whatever. All right. I'm not saying you can't do any of those things. Go ahead. Knock yourself out. But I need you to pick up on, demonstrate, and share the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments. The hand of Moses, the kingdom of God. For what? To teach them. But first you practice it, as Moses did, because you're called to leadership. You want to be responsible. Now, for you New Testament Christians, it just says, well, Jesus died for us all. We're all under grace. You have the laziest response that I can even. It doesn't mean that you get to cheat on your wife or cheat on your husband. It doesn't mean that you get to spend all your money and go live off credit cards. It doesn't mean that you have to spend your last $1,000 going to a conference when you still need to pay the rent on your studio apartment. It doesn't mean going and leasing a car for $1,500 a month when you only make $5,000 a month. It doesn't mean that you go out there to try to impress other people. Then we just have this conversation, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. It doesn't mean that you get to live outside of kingdom principles while espousing kingdom principles. No. You got to live by the statutes, the commandments, and the judgments yourself. I know I do. I know I have to. And I know because I have not gotten it all right, it has not all gone right for me. And I know I'm not the only one. No, we have to challenge ourselves. Message is first to the teacher. So I take full responsibility gladly because I want to improve and grow and become more responsible in my leadership by demonstrating the statutes, the commandments, and the judgments, and having a testimony that heals people. Not being afraid to express myself or scared of somebody's responses to my imperfections, even though they're dealing with their own, and too scared to talk about them because what will people think about me? Pride of life. Yet we want to lead. Well scripted, whatever. Too scared to be real. Yet we want to lead. When the Bible clearly says here in Deuteronomy chapter 5, which thou shalt teach them that they may do. Now, how many of you are smoking weed telling your kids not to smoke weed? How many of you are living an unhealthy physical life while telling your kids to live a physically healthy life? How many of you are preaching to your kids the importance of education, yet at 50, 60, 70 years old, you feel like you got it all figured out, so therefore education for you is not necessary? How many of you, or in your 40s or in your 30s? If education is important, then demonstrate it. If healthy living is important, then demonstrate it. Personal responsibility draws the attention of those who are interested in your demonstrated ability to be responsible in areas that they also have an interest in being responsible in. You will see them or notice them or be aware of them by their fruit. So you're teaching them that they may do. You're teaching them that this is leadership. This is Moses. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 31, God speaking directly to him who has demonstrated this leadership, which is the reason why a lot of us call him one of the most humblest men that ever walked the face of the earth, and was imperfect. But his leadership was stellar, was the best, was the highest example, because he demonstrated it. Pastor, teacher, evangelist, apostle, not saying it in order, bear with me, because there are those who say, well, because this comes first, this, that, and okay, gotcha. And I'm doing this on purpose, because if you like, I can do pastor, pastor, teacher, evangelist. I think it's pastor, teacher, evangelist. What's the first one? Pastor, teacher, evangelist. What's the next one? Being playful, so bear with me here. Which thou shalt teach them that they may do in the land. In other words, in the goal that they're looking to accomplish, or the vision that I have given them in the land of promise, in the land that they will possess. God owns, they'll possess it. You'll find out what happens later on. But that's another story. See, leadership is not just about, standing on stage or sitting in an office and barking out orders and whatever. It's coming right out here into the street and meeting the people where they are and the people meeting you where you are and you getting the responses and being able to respond. And at the same time, teaching them that they may do. You get it? See, I know a lot of my brothers in Ghana and my brothers in Kenya. I can't mention Bishop's name because he's been called apostle by another organization. But, I've had the privilege of sowing into his life over a period of time, and now he's got his doctorate degree, and he's an apostle with this other organization who I don't really know. But I honor him because when I met him, this particular bishop, he had no car. Then he had a bike. Then he got a car. Then he got repoed. Then he paid it off. Then he ran for office. Came in second or third. Then he got his doctorate degree. And he did it all in front of the people that they may do in the land that God will eventually give them for their possession. I could tell that story about a young lady in Texas. I can tell that story about a young man in Ghana. He doesn't talk to me anymore, but still I can tell the story. Last lesson of leadership, if you're paying attention. Don't worry about the end result. Focus on your part to be an example of doing. God will call people into your sphere of influence. And how you lead them or how you mislead them will determine your depth and your height and your breadth. Because the streets are watching. CashApp $MrPaulDozier. CashApp $MrPaulDozier. We are on a journey. From Genesis to Revelation, I do not know how long it's going to take. And if these videos or podcasts or however you're listening to them are helpful to you, please like and share them. If they're helpful to you, they will be helpful to others as well. I'm depending on you. If you like, you can Zelle, for those who are, I think, in the country. paulcdozier, Dozier, Paul, P as in Peter, AUL, C as in Charles, D as in David, OZ like zebra, IER@gmail.com. That is my Zelle. If you can support me on the books, I would appreciate that. The Business of Ministry, the Christ Culture is the title, but the Business of Ministry is the subtitle. And Ghetto Education, both located on Amazon. Just type in the title, Ghetto Education, and my name, Paul Dozier. Or I think it's Paul C. Dozier and the Christ Culture, the Business of Ministry. First of all, thank you so much for walking with me as I do this. It means a lot to me. This is something I'm doing for my kids. And thank you for taking the journey with us. Thank you for taking the journey with me. God bless you.